Did you know that individual incentives promote advice seeking but reduce advice giving? And on the contrary, team incentives promote advice giving but reduce advice seeking. Hello everyone, my name is Sebastian Hohenberg. I'm a marketing professor at the University of Münster, where I hold the chair for digital transformation. And in addition, I also serve as the co-director for the newly founded Research Center for Business Transformation. Today, I'm excited to be here and talk about a topic that I'm really passionate about, which is cooperation and advice exchange within sales organizations. The idea for this research basically came from questioning in how far traditional centralized training methods would always be the best choice for sales organizations in this fast-changing, dynamic and ever-changing sales environment. And in particular, we were wondering in how far peer-to-peer helping and cooperation could be viable, more flexible alternatives to these traditional centralized training programs. So let me emphasize two key insights. First, our findings show the unique nature of sales organizations when it comes to advice exchange and cooperation. For example, our results show that the overall likelihood of advice exchange within sales is remarkably low. And then when it does occur, that giving advice and receiving advice in return is really important. So in sales, it's really about this give or take mechanism. The second key insight I want to emphasize relates to the dynamics of different types of incentives. Our results show that while individual incentives promote advice-seeking behavior, they also reduce advice-giving behavior. And this has to do with the motives that these incentives make salient. For example, individual incentives emphasize the improvement motive, and so they introduce some additional competition. In contrast, team incentives do the exact opposite. They promote advice-giving behavior, but they reduce also advice-seeking behavior. And this is because these incentives promote the motive of the collective effort. For managers, we have two recommendations. First, our findings show that mixing team incentives and individual incentives, as it is common in many sales organizations today, create a unique tension between cooperation and competition. And we recommend that sales leaders think carefully about reducing this tension a little bit. And one recommendation we have in this regard is to think about the tasks within a sales organization. For example, there are certain tasks that relate naturally to the team, for example, cross-selling, new product selling, or even key account management, which is a team-related task. On the contrary, there are other tasks within the sales organization that could be more useful for individual incentive because they relate more to the individual component of performance. The second recommendation we have is to motivate collaboration. We have learned that the overall likelihood of advice exchange is remarkably low. And so we believe that motivating more collaboration could be a very useful thing for many sales organizations. For example, by rewarding those within the sales organization that provide a lot of advice to others. One could also integrate the star sellers within a specific mentoring program. For researchers, I have two recommendations. First, our study is one of the first investigations that examines advice exchange within sales organizations. And we have clearly shown that advice exchange in sales organization is quite different from advice exchange in other settings. And so our recommendation is to conduct more context-specific research and focus really on other social behaviors, for example, within sales organizations. The second recommendation relates to the method that we have applied. We are one of the first studies that uses this type of social network analysis to study sales organizations. And we believe that future research could really leverage this new method and study more nuances of the social networks within sales, such as the importance of specific ties and nodes within the overall network.